Welcome to On Your Own Terms. I'm Patty Talbot, and this is a place where we learn together what it takes to change the world on our own terms and in our own special ways. Today, I have with me an amazing woman named Joanna Conti. I met Joanna at Heroic Public Speaking, where we're both learning to save the world one speech at a time. When I heard Joanna speaking, I knew that I needed to talk with her. Not only because she's doing change-making work for the whole wide world, but because the issue that she talks about has visited upon my own home and my own life personally. Joanna has done many important things in her life, not the least of which is her more recent, in the last few years, initiatives to do research on what really works to conquer the plague of addiction. You'll want to tune in today to hear Joanna's homegrown solutions for a patchwork world. And I know that you will be inspired, as I am, to want to celebrate her work, support her work, and cultivate that work by letting others that you know whose family members are suffering from the trauma related to addiction to access the important research that she's doing and the resources that she makes available. I've asked Joanna to use our typical framework, homegrown solutions for a patchwork world, to share her story with us today. This is Joanna Conti.
Blessed with a really loving mom and a very supportive dad, who back when I was just 5 or 6 years old told me, Joanna, you can do anything in the world that you want to do. I've never forgotten that. And that combined with a typical type A personality and the fact that I've always been driven by challenge. When I was ever deciding what did I want to study in college, my dad was a PhD chemical engineer. And chemical engineering had the reputation of being the toughest major on campus. And I was good in math and science, so I became a chemical engineer. And when I wanted to go on and get my master's and I had to study a language, I looked at the choices and I could study Spanish or French, which I had done some of in high school, or I could study German, or I could study Japanese. So Japanese fascinated me with all of the neat writing system and the kanji and how different it was. And so, of course, I took the challenge of studying Japanese. So after college, I joined Procter & Gamble and Campbell's Soup and worked my way up the corporate ladder for a while, and then decided to, again, pursue the challenge and start a company on my own. I had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was 12, I had started my first little business with a 12-year-old friend of mine. We had a play school for preschoolers where we had 8 or 10 kids from the neighborhood come in for 3 hours a day during the summer. And the kids loved it. The parents loved it. We made a little bit of money. It was a wonderful experience. So I started my first business at 12, and I'd always known that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. In 1987, I left the corporate world and started a food company, and over the next number of years started a software company and went back and got my master's. I had 4 children, and I started to feel like I really wanted to use my skills to make a difference in the world. That I felt like I had some somewhat unique skills, and I wanted to make sure that I was using them for things that really made a difference. This was now about the year 2000, and what was really speaking to me was the plight of orphans around the world. And so I decided to start an international nonprofit where over the next 4 years that I was running it hands-on and over the next 8 years after that, we were able to help tens of thousands of orphans and street children in 8 countries in Africa and Asia, from doing everything from starting microgrant and microcredit programs that enabled their guardians to pull themselves and their families out of poverty, to we built 55 classrooms in the slums. We did school fee sponsorships to send thousands of children to primary school. We built some group homes and stuff. It was a wonderful experience. And as I was doing that, I started to realize that I was very concerned about the direction our country was going. So before I knew it, I had decided to run for Congress and ran for Congress in Colorado in 2004 and raised a lot of money and got the endorsements of the papers. But I was running in a district I was a Democrat and it was 2-1 Republican. And in the final analysis, it really didn't make a difference and I didn't win. But that was another case of me saying, I want to see how I can make change in the world. Eventually, I moved to Maryland. I went to Georgetown, studied foreign policy, and ended up getting involved in politics again, running for county executive in our area. And again, I didn't win, but it was a phenomenal learning experience. And I met thousands of people and learned so much. And it was just a terrific experience. Along this time, during the time when I was in Maryland and running for county executive, as I mentioned, we had 4 kids, and my daughter developed a really strong addiction, and she was regularly drinking to lethal levels, to levels that other people had often died with that level of alcohol in their system. And over the course of 6 years, I was forced to try and figure out how to help her recover. Was thrown into a new world that no parent ever expects to be part of. And you're thrown in this world and you don't know anything about it. And yet you know that your child's life may very well depend on the decisions that you help them make. And so over the course of 6 years, she was in and out of multiple different treatment episodes. And I learned just how occult and decades behind the rest of healthcare the world of addiction treatment was. Fortunately, after 6 years, she was able to recover, and she's now been in recovery for 10 years, and it's completely changed her life around, and now is the wonderful mom of 2 little girls and with a 3rd child on the way, and she's got a fantastic career and a house in suburbia and all that wonderful marriage, all the things that you hope for your children. And I keep thinking back to those days where every time the phone rang, I was terrified that someone was going to be telling me that she had died. So when the worst was behind us with Krina, I decided I really wanted to find a way to help the parents coming behind us to help their children recover. One of the things I had learned during my own experience was how there was absolutely no information for families to help you choose a center that's really providing effective treatment. You hear all these horror stories, and there are some bad actors out there. Fortunately, a lot fewer than there used to be. But when your child's life is at stake, you really need to know that the program that you're sending them to is effective. And what I learned over these 6 years was that addiction treatment centers weren't bothering to measure their effectiveness. When I would ask them on the phone, what's your success rate? They would either change the subject or they would make up some answer. In one case, a treatment center owner had the audacity to tell me, we have 98% success rate. And I'm like, in what alternate universe? What does that mean? Almost everyone is sober when they walk out your door? It was just so far-fetched. And I knew it wasn't true. And I thought, how dare you lie to me just to get my money when my child's life is at stake. When Karina was in recovery, I decided I really wanted to figure out how to help the families coming behind us to find the centers that could prove that they were effective. And so, as a labor of love, I was running another company at the time. I decided I would create a website where families searching for treatment could go. They would put information like it needs to be in this location, it needs to be this type of treatment, it maybe needs to take this type of insurance. And the treatment centers that met their needs, that had the best success rates, would show up on a list for them. And then they could learn more about those treatment centers and contact them directly. So I did this back in 2015 and was absolutely horrified to discover that there were a grand total of 5 addiction treatment centers in the whole United States who were monitoring their outcomes, measuring their outcomes, and willing to share them publicly. Now, there are thousands of treatment centers, and there were 5 that were doing this. And I thought, this is healthcare, for heaven's sakes. Why on earth don't we have better measurement of this? So I thought, I can't start to promote this website that just recommends 5 centers. So instead, as I said, I'm pretty stubborn. Instead of just giving up, I started to go to some conferences and talk with rehab owners and say, why on earth aren't you measuring your outcomes? And enough of them said, I want to, I don't know how to do it, that I said to myself, there's a business opportunity here. And along the way, I had taught myself how to program and had spent 5 years running a software company. And I could look at the challenge and I could say, this isn't rocket science. We can figure out how to cost effectively follow up with patients after they leave treatment and learn how they're doing. And so I decided to start Vista Research Group in late 2015 to do this. And as I was digging into all of the academic research about how people recover from addiction, I learned that there had been some research years before that had shown that if you monitor patients during treatment and report how they're doing in their own words to their clinicians, that people get better faster. So I thought that's an obvious thing to add to what we're providing to our clients. So I launched Vista Research Group with 2 types of research in March of 2016. We monitored patients during treatment and reported the results in real time to their clinicians in very pretty little graphs so they could see how the depression is going and how are their cravings. And there's a whole lot of different things we monitor. And then once patients leave treatment, we follow up with them 1, 6, and 12 months later to learn how they're doing. And then we report the results back to the centers so that they can use them to continually improve the treatment that they're providing. So along the way, I, of course, had to learn a whole new industry. I, of course, had to learn how to talk with and help and support addiction treatment center owners, most of whom, frankly, were in recovery themselves. That's why they had been drawn to start these programs. I've had the wonderful good fortune of having a terrific team that I've been able to build around myself. Stacy Daniel Summers has been working with me almost from the very beginning, and she is a licensed clinical social worker. And so she brings the clinical understanding of what's happening with patients to make sure that we ask the right questions and communicate it in ways to the clinicians that are treating the patients in ways that are useful. And I've had to put together a whole team of software developers and administrators and people who can provide client support and people who can talk to people who are maybe not doing so well after treatment and can have so much empathy that these patients who aren't doing well are willing to share how they're doing with us. So we have a wonderful woman who's headed up our outcomes calling program for the last almost 6 years and stuff, who just is phenomenal making connections with people on the phone. So we had to put together this whole team of people with very different skill sets in order to progress against our mission of helping more people recover from addiction. And we've now monitored over 70,000 patients during treatment and followed up with over 25,000 in the first year after they've left treatment. So we've come a long way since 2016. I'd made the decision back in 2015 that it was just way too early to provide a resource for families to find treatment centers that have proven that they're providing effective treatment. But when COVID hit, I sat back, and the people running addiction treatment centers had to change every single element of how they were treating patients, like on a dime. And it would change sometimes day to day. And I thought the last thing I want to do is try to be hassling them about, you should sign up for research, right? So I said, we just simply can't focus on sales for the next 3-6 months. And I thought, this is an opportunity. We now have a critical mass of treatment centers who have proven that they're providing effective treatment. So my daughter and I together created the nonprofit Conquer Addiction, and we created the website that I had visualized years before, where families could now search for treatment centers that met their criteria. They would receive a list of treatment centers, and if families wanted to learn more about a particular center, they could click through to that center's page on Conquer Addiction. They might see a video. They would definitely see the research results and the impact that treatment at that center had to the patients that were attending there. And they can see the website, they can call the admissions line number, they can do whatever they want when they're ready to follow up with that treatment center. And we don't collect information on anyone who comes to our site or anything like that. That's not what we're about. This is our way to help the families coming behind us to find effective treatment that meets their needs, and also to support the many treatment centers out there that really are providing excellent treatment. So I'm now 8 years into this process of working with treatment centers, helping them measure and improve their effectiveness. And as proud as I am of what we've accomplished, because we've created a whole new industry. We've created the way to cost effectively measure and continually improve the treatment. But what's been upsetting to me is that change always takes longer than you think, a lot longer. And meanwhile, in this country today, someone is dying of addiction, drug or alcohol abuse, every 2 minutes. And so what I've realized in the last year or so is that change is coming too slowly. And we need to find a way to measure the effectiveness of treatment centers and of health insurance companies. And we need to find a way to do it at scale. So while I'm continuing to working with our clients through Vista Research Group, and hopefully continuing to get more and more treatment centers to invest in measuring their outcomes and reporting them to families, I'm also pivoting to Conquer Addiction and focusing on a different way that we can move a lot faster. And so we have a research institute with Conquer Addiction, our nonprofit, and we're in the process of launching what we're calling the Conquer Addiction MOONSHOT, which will use 2 different types of research to answer the 3 key questions that we really need to know to help a lot more patients recover. We need to know if you have a loved one that is struggling with addiction, the first thing you need to know is what type of treatment is most likely to be effective for your son, for your wife, for your parent, for your best friend. That's basic healthcare 101. And we've never done that type of research in addiction treatment. And so that's the first question we need to answer. What type of treatment is most likely to be effective for you? The second question we need to answer is, okay, that's what type of treatment likely to be most effective. Where do you find really effective treatment of that type? And the third question that we need to answer is, and how do we make sure that your loved one is given a fighting chance to recover by having long enough treatment at an effective treatment center paid for by health insurance or by Medicaid or what have you? Those are the three key questions that we need to answer. And I think if we can answer those, I believe we can dramatically improve the number of people who recover from addiction. And we're not getting there fast enough in the route that I've spent the last 8 years doing. And so the Conquer Addiction Moonshot is focusing on two key questions. One is identifying through research, what type of treatment is most likely to be effective for an individual, their drug use history, maybe some other demographic information. We don't know what factors yet, but we need to do very comprehensive research to answer this question. And then the second thing we need to do is we need to create a registry, a patient registry, that we will bring in information from claims data, that we will be able to get the data on hopefully millions of people who've gone through different types of addiction treatment with different health insurance companies. And we'll be able to show at scale, here's the wide variation in the effectiveness of different treatment centers. And by the way, here's your treatment center. You're a 5-star treatment center according to this data that we've pulled for patients who've left your treatment center. Do you want to promote that on Conquer Addiction? And then we'll do the same thing for payers, because we've also found that the success rates for different payers, just like the success rates for different rehabs, vary all across the board. As an example, one rehab that we have data on has 54% of their patients in recovery 1 year later. That's better than 1 out of 2. Rehabs on the other end go down to less than 20%. Less than 1 out of 5 patients is in recovery a year later. We need to start bringing that information to families, to employers, to others who can use it to make sure that their loved ones or their employees go to the most effective treatment center for the type of treatment that is most likely to be effective for them, and that their health insurance payers give them a fighting chance to recover. And I believe by developing this research and by holding the providers and the payers accountable for their outcomes, that we can improve by 50% how many people recover after an episode of addiction treatment. And that is what really has got me very motivated. But we're at the very early days of the Conquer Addiction Moonshot. It's at this point, it's an idea. We're starting to share that widely. We're talking to employers who might be interested in sharing their claims data with us in return for reports on what are the most effective providers and the most effective insurance companies in their networks. And by the way, we're not into shaming in any way. If we're talking to a treatment center that, as I said, we have a huge variation in outcomes, the treatment centers at the high end, they're probably very excited about promoting how effective their treatment center is. But the treatment centers at the low end, what we'd like to do, we're not going to force them. We're not going to shame them to share their information. And the same thing with payers. We will just show the people, here's where you rank. And if you'd like to promote your results, we're happy to do that for you. And if you don't, we're happy to work with you to continue to improve. One thing I think it's really important for families who are in the depths of this struggle with a loved one with addiction is for you to know that your son, your daughter, your wife, your mom, they can recover from addiction. And when I look back on the horrible years of Karina's struggles, when there were so many times I was terrified every time the phone would ring that someone would tell me my daughter had died. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, could I imagine where we were today, where she's just doing wonderfully? I wouldn't have believed it. And so I want people to know that recovery does happen. And sometimes it happens after you can't imagine it ever getting any worse. So I just want people to know, don't ever give up hope. There is always hope, no matter how bad things seem today. If you are in the midst of struggling with a child or another loved one's addiction, please know that we want to be there for you. And I'd suggest that you go to Conquer Addiction's website. It's conquer-addiction.org. And you'll see two different things there. You'll see a search where you can search for treatment that has proven that it's effective. The second thing you'll see is different articles and different resources that we have put together to help families struggling with addiction to recover. If you have any questions, reach out, send me an email, call our number. We really want to help you help your family member or loved one recover. The second thing I would ask is we are going to need to raise a couple $1 million in order to do the MOONSHOT. And if you know of a family foundation or someone else who knows firsthand perhaps just how difficult it is to help someone they love recover from addiction, please introduce us so that if they're interested, they could help support our work and help millions more people recover over the next couple of years.
Thank you, Joanna. I know that our audience here today has been moved and inspired and given hope by the message that you brought to us today. I know that people who are listening who have family members they love who are struggling with addiction will be excited to know that there's a resource like yours and research like what you've been doing to help find solutions to this terrible situation that is plaguing so many families and so many communities and so many individuals. You've given me hope today as someone who has a loved one on this journey, and I am very, very grateful. Folks, as you know, we use the Changemaker framework focused on homegrown solutions for a patchwork world, or in other words, our beingness, our doingness, our connectedness, and our reflectiveness to talk about what it takes to be a change maker. There's 16 attributes that all change makers have in common. I know it's easy for you to see that Joanna is active in all of them, but today I want to highlight that doingness quadrant. Can you see that she's a person who found within herself the agency to do something about what matters to her? She's an action-oriented person who is taking action and using some very creative and innovative approaches to tackling and getting a handle on this terrible situation called addiction. And she is persevering. Change makers do not give up when the going gets tough. And that is Joanna Conti. I know it's also easy for you to see how important this work is to attaining the Sustainable Development Goals articulated by the United Nations with a timeline set for the year 2030. There are 17 goals that the United Nations had set out, and Joanna's work is clearly related to goal number 3, good health and well-being for everyone. But without that good health and well-being and overcoming addiction for those folks that are suffering, we cannot possibly reach the others. We can't overcome hunger. We can't overcome poverty, quality education, infrastructure, employment, strong institutions, so that we can have a peaceful and more just world for everyone. This work with addiction is related to all of these other goals, because it's only when we are healthy within ourselves and our families and our communities that we have what it takes to show up and work seriously in partnership to solve the other problems that are plaguing us in our environment and in our communities. Please follow Joanna's work and access the resources she's provided. And if you know people who could possibly support her Conquer Addiction Moonshot, this is the time to get in touch with her on the website that she's provided. Next week, we will feature another change-making woman who will be here to tell us about her homegrown solutions for a patchwork world on her own terms. In the meantime, may you be grounded in your beingness, guided in your doingness, generous in your connectedness, and inspired in your reflectiveness, so you can change the world on your own terms. I'm Patty Talbot. I'm always learning, and I know you are too.